An unexpected encounter. The neon signs of Space Station Nexus 7 cast an eerie glow across David Chen's face as he trudged through the crowded commercial district. After 18 hours cramped in economy-class interstellar transit, his throat felt like sandpaper. All he wanted was a simple bottle of water. "Just my luck," he muttered, passing yet another alien vendor selling something that looked suspiciously like sentient jello. The station's artificial gravity felt slightly off, making each step require more effort than it should. Colorful holograms advertising everything from quantum computing upgrades to black market organ transplants flickered overhead. Finally, tucked between a Zolblaxian-fashioned boutique and what appeared to be an antimatter repair shop, David spotted a glowing blue sign with universal standard text: "General Goodies and Re-FR-ESH-Meme-Tees." Relief washed over him as he pushed through the transparent sliding doors. The store's interior was surprisingly Earth-like, with neat rows of shelves stocked with products from across the galaxy. The familiar sight of clear water bottles in a refrigerated section drew him like a magnet. As he reached for one, a melodic voice stopped him in his tracks. "The filtered spring water from Kepler 186 is far superior to that synthesized stuff." David turned to find himself face to face with the most striking alien he'd ever encountered. The shopkeeper stood nearly 7 feet tall, with iridescent scales that shifted colors like oil on water. 4 arms moved with fluid grace as she organized items on a nearby shelf, and compound eyes that resembled cut emeralds studied him with obvious curiosity. "I just need something to drink," David stammered, caught off guard by both her appearance and perfect English. "Been a long flight." The alien's scales rippled with a pattern that somehow conveyed amusement. "Allow me to introduce myself. I am Cathara, proprietor of this humble establishment." She extended one of her lower arms. "And you are the first human I've seen in quite some time." David shook her hand carefully, noting how smooth and cool her scales felt. "David Chen, just passing through on my way to the mining colonies in the Outer Rim." Seeking fortune in the lithium fields." Cathara's head tilted at an angle that should have been impossible for her neck structure. Or perhaps running from something. The question hit uncomfortably close to home. David had indeed taken the mining job to escape from a failed relationship, mounting debts, and the suffocating feeling that he was wasting his life on Earth. But he wasn't about to share that with a stranger, alien or not. "Just looking for a change of scenery," he said with a forced smile, reaching again for the water bottle. Cathara's upper right arm shot out with startling speed, blocking his reach. "Before you settle for mere hydration, might I offer you something more interesting?" Her scales shifted to a deep purple hue, something that could change your perspective entirely. David's first instinct was to decline politely and get out of there, but something in those alien eyes held him transfixed. "What exactly are we talking about here?" Cathara reached beneath the counter and produced a small crystal vial containing what looked like liquid starlight. "This is celestial tears, distilled from the aurora fields of my homeworld. It's completely safe for human consumption and legally sanctioned by the Galactic Trade Commission." The liquid in the vial swirled hypnotically. "And what does it do?" David asked, already knowing he probably shouldn't. "It temporarily allows the drinker to perceive quantum possibilities, to see the many paths their life could take, branching out like roots of a cosmic tree." Thara's voice took on an almost reverent quality. "Many find it helps them make difficult decisions or break free from self-imposed limitations." David thought about the series of choices that had led him here, the safe career he'd abandoned, the relationship he'd let crumble, the leap into the unknown he'd taken by signing up for the mining job. What if he could see where different choices might have led? "How much?" he heard himself asking. Cathara's scales flickered with patterns he couldn't interpret. "For you, no charge. Consider it a welcome gift to Nexus 7. She pressed the vial into his hand. "But I suggest finding somewhere quiet and comfortable before drinking it. The experience can be intense. David stared at the vial, his throat still parched but now forgotten. Why me? Why offer this for free? Let's just say I have a feeling about you, David Chen. Cathara's compound eyes seemed to see right through him. Sometimes the universe puts the right person in the right place at exactly the right moment. What happens next is up to them. With trembling fingers, David pocketed the vial. Farah handed him a bottle of water, the expensive Kepler 186S stuff, and waved away his attempt to pay. As he turned to leave, her voice followed him. Oh, and David, whatever you see, remember, the future isn't set in stone. It's shaped by the choices we make here and now. The store's doors slid shut behind him with a soft hiss. David stood in the neon-lit corridor, a bottle of alien water in one hand and a vial of impossible possibilities in his pocket. He had a decision to make. The next 5 minutes would change his life forever. Into the quantum deep, David's footsteps echoed through the less-traveled corridors of Nexus 7 as he searched for somewhere private. The vial of celestial tears pulsed faintly in his pocket, like a tiny trapped star seeking freedom. He finally found an observation deck that was mercifully empty. Most travelers preferred the more popular viewing areas on the station's upper levels. The deck's transparent walls offered a breathtaking view of nearby solar systems, their light stretched and distorted by the station's quantum field generators. David settled into one of the reclined viewing chairs, designed to accommodate various alien physiologies. He pulled out the crystal vial, watching the silvery liquid dance within. "This is crazy," he muttered, breaking the seal. Absolutely crazy. But he'd come to space looking for something different, hadn't he? Something to shake him out of his earthbound perspective. With a deep breath, he lifted the vial to his lips and drank. The liquid tasted like starlight, would if starlight had a flavor, sharp, electric, and impossibly ancient. For a moment, nothing happened. David almost laughed at himself for being so dramatic about the whole thing. Then reality fractured. The observation deck dissolved around him, replaced by cascading waves of probability. He saw himself, but not just one self, thousands, millions of possible Davids stretching out in every direction. Each one represented a different choice, a different path. In one thread, he'd never left Earth. He saw himself married to Sarah, working his old accounting job, living a life of comfortable predictability. Their children played in a backyard under Earth's familiar sun. That David was content, if not exactly fulfilled. Another thread showed him as a successful entrepreneur, having invested his savings in asteroid mining rights instead of taking a job as a manual laborer. That David walked the corridors of his own space station, wealthy beyond imagination, but increasingly isolated from genuine human connection. Countless other possibilities flickered past. David the deep space explorer, David the colony governor, David the failed prospector drinking away his sorrows in some forgotten outpost. Some versions of himself had found happiness, others tragedy, but each had something to teach him. Then the visions shifted, moving beyond mere personal futures. He saw humanity's potential paths spreading out like a vast web. In some, they remained confined to their solar system, turning inward and slowly stagnating. In others, they exploded across the galaxy, building wonders and forging connections with countless alien species. A particular thread caught his attention, one where humanity's unique perspective helped bridge divides between different alien races. He saw humans acting as mediators, their adaptability and creativity helping forge a more united galaxy. And somehow, he sensed his own choices could influence which of these futures became more likely. The experience was overwhelming, yet David found he could process it all with surprising clarity. Cathara had undersold the celestial tears effects. This wasn't just about seeing possibilities, it was about understanding the interconnected nature of all things. As the visions continued, David became aware of a presence watching him. Not Cathara, but something older, vast, and unfathomable. He realized with sudden clarity that the celestial tears weren't just a psychedelic substance. They were a tool, a test, a way for something ancient to evaluate potential. The presence seemed to approve of what it found in David's mind. Knowledge began downloading directly into his consciousness, understanding of quantum mechanics that would make Earth's top physicists weep, insights into alien psychology that no human had ever grasped, and most importantly, a purpose. "We have watched your species for a long time," a voice that wasn't really a voice communicated. "You humans have something rare, the ability to see patterns others miss, to make intuitive leaps that defy logic, to adapt and grow in ways that surprise even us. We've been waiting for the right individual to help guide humanity toward its full potential." David tried to respond, but communicating in this state was like trying to speak underwater. The presence understood anyway. "Yes, it's a heavy responsibility, but you've already shown the courage to leave everything you knew behind. This is simply the next step on that journey." The visions began to fade, reality reasserting itself one quantum particle at a time. David found himself back in the observation deck chair, his body trembling slightly. The empty vial slipped from his fingers and shattered on the deck with a crystalline chime. But he wasn't the same person who had sat down in that chair. The knowledge remained, along with a clear understanding of what he needed to do next. The mining job would have to wait. He had a more important mission now. As David stood on shaky legs, his quantum-enhanced awareness showed him probability waves rippling out from this moment, affecting countless lives across the galaxy. He pulled out his communicator, already knowing the exact sequence of numbers to contact the Presence's agents on Nexus 7. When he returned to Cathara's shop, and he would return, it would be with questions she hadn't expected and knowledge she thought impossible for a human to possess. But first, he needed to center himself, to fully integrate the changes the celestial tears had catalyzed in his mind. David turned to face a star-filled view screen, his new awareness allowing him to see the quantum fields that held the station in place. He smiled, understanding now why Cathara had chosen him. Sometimes the universe indeed put the right person in the right place, but it helped when there were ancient intelligences nudging things along. The real journey was just beginning. The hidden network. Following the coordinates implanted in his enhanced consciousness, David made his way to the station's lower levels. Here, away from the tourist-friendly upper decks, Nexus 7 showed its true nature. Maintenance drones scuttled along the walls like mechanical spiders, repairing microfractures in the quantum shielding. The corridors were narrower, designed more for function than comfort. He stopped at what appeared to be a blank wall. His new awareness revealed the quantum signature hidden beneath the surface, a doorway masked by technology far beyond anything humanity had developed. David pressed his palm against the wall, letting the residual celestial tears in his system interface with the ancient security system. The wall rippled like water, and he stepped through into a hidden chamber that shouldn't have been possible given Nexus 7's official blueprints. Inside, he found himself in what looked like a cross between a laboratory and a meditation chamber. Crystalline structures pulsed with bio-organic light, and holographic displays showed real-time data from across the galaxy. "Welcome, Initiate Chen," a familiar voice called out. Thara emerged from behind a crystalline column, but she looked different now. Her scales had shifted to show complex mathematical patterns, and her compound eyes gleamed with unconcealed intelligence. "I see the tears showed you what you needed to see." "You're not just a shopkeeper," David said, though he'd already figured that out. "You're part of something bigger, something ancient." Cathara's scales rippled with approval. "We are the Quantum Concordat, a network of beings dedicated to guiding developing species toward their full potential. We've been watching humanity for centuries, waiting for the right moment and the right person to make contact." "Why me?" David asked, though the tears had given him glimpses of the answer. "I'm nobody special, just a failed accountant running away from his problems." "That's exactly why." Another voice joined in. A figure stepped out of the shadows, a being that looked like living mercury, its form constantly shifting. I am Nexus, the station's true consciousness. We chose you because you were willing to admit your failures, to leave everything behind in search of something more. That takes a rare kind of courage. David's enhanced mind processed this revelation. The station is alive. All of this, he gestured at the hidden chamber, has been here, right under everyone's noses. Humans see what they expect to see, Cathara explained. Your species is remarkably adaptable, but also prone to filtering out anything that doesn't fit your current understanding of reality. The celestial tears helped break down those filters in your mind. But why now? David asked. Why is humanity ready for contact? Nexus's liquid form coalesced into something vaguely humanoid. Because your species stands at a crossroads. The quantum probability streams are converging toward a critical moment. Humanity will either transcend its limitations and join the galactic community as equals, or, the being's form rippled with concern. Or we'll destroy ourselves, David finished, seeing the probability streams clearly in his enhanced consciousness. Like so many species before us, precisely, Cathara moved to one of the holographic displays, bringing up images of Earth. Your world's quantum field is becoming increasingly unstable. Your experiments with quantum computing, while impressive, are having unintended consequences. Without guidance, there's a 73.4% probability of catastrophic quantum cascade failure within the next 5 years. The implications hit David like a physical blow. That would tear apart the fabric of reality itself. Which is why we need you, David. Nexus's mercury-like form rippled. Your unique combination of human intuition and quantum awareness makes you perfect for the role of bridge between our worlds. But I don't know anything about quantum physics, David protested. At least I didn't until a few hours ago. Cathara's scales shifted to a pattern he now recognized as amusement. The knowledge was always there in your species' collective unconscious. The tears simply helped you access it. Humans have an innate understanding of quantum mechanics that even you don't realize. Why do you think your scientists made such rapid progress in the field? David walked to one of the crystal columns, watching the energy pulse within. His enhanced mind could now read the quantum data streams flowing through it, understanding their implications. You want me to help prevent this catastrophe, to guide humanity toward a better future. Not just prevent catastrophe, Nexus corrected. We want you to help humanity reach its true potential. Your species has a unique role to play in the galaxy's future. The quantum probability streams show countless futures where human creativity and adaptability help solve problems that have puzzled even the oldest races. But no pressure, right? David said with a nervous laugh. Cathara placed one of her 4 hands on his shoulder. You won't be alone. The Concordat has agents throughout human space. We'll teach you everything you need to know, starting with how to control your new abilities. As if on cue, David's quantum awareness suddenly spiked. The world around him became a maze of probability waves and quantum potentials. He staggered, overwhelmed by the input. Easy, Cathara steadied him. The effects of the tears are still stabilizing. You'll need to learn to filter the quantum noise, to focus on what's important. When do we start? David asked, already knowing the answer. We already have, Nexus replied. Your real training begins now. The crystalline columns pulsed brighter, and David felt his consciousness expanding further. The true scope of his mission began to unfold before him, and despite the enormity of it all, he felt ready. He had come to space looking for purpose, and the universe had answered in ways he could never have imagined. The failed accountant who had just wanted a bottle of water was gone. In his place stood humanity's first quantum initiate, ready to help shape the destiny of his species. The real question was, what would he learn next? First test. David's first week of training with the Quantum Concordat proved more challenging than anything he'd ever experienced. His enhanced mind absorbed vast amounts of information, But controlling his new abilities was another matter entirely. Currently, he stood in a quantum-shielded training chamber, sweat beading on his forehead as he tried to focus. Again, Cathara instructed, her scales shifting with patterns of encouragement. Remember, quantum manipulation isn't about forcing reality to change. It's about understanding which probability is most likely and gently nudging it into existence. Floating before David was a simple metal sphere. His task was to move it without touching it, not through telekinesis, but by adjusting quantum probabilities to make the sphere's position shift naturally. So far, he'd managed to make it vibrate slightly and, once accidentally, turn it into a cube. "You're thinking too much like a human," Nexus observed, its mercury-like form rippling nearby. "Stop trying to impose order on chaos. Embrace the uncertainty." David took a deep breath, letting his quantum awareness expand. He could see the probability clouds surrounding the sphere, infinite possible positions it could occupy. Instead of trying to force it to move, he simply believed in the possibility where it was 3 feet to the left. The sphere vanished and reappeared exactly where he'd envisioned it. "Better," Cathara nodded. "Much better. But we don't have time to celebrate. We've just received troubling news from Earth." A holographic display materialized, showing a research facility in Nevada. "Quantum Labs Incorporated," Nexus explained, its form condensing with concern. "They're about to test a new quantum computing architecture, one that could trigger the cascade failure we warned you about." David's enhanced mind processed the technical data streaming across the display. They don't realize their containment field has a critical flaw. If they activate the system, you didn't need to finish the sentence. They all saw the probability streams showing potential disaster. "This is your first real test," Cathara said. "We need to prevent this disaster without revealing our existence. The human race isn't ready for full disclosure yet." "How am I supposed to do that?" David asked. "I can barely move a metal ball reliably." "You're thinking too small," Nexus chided. "The celestial tears didn't just give you quantum awareness. They awakened your natural human ability to see patterns and connections others miss. Use that." David studied the facility's data more carefully. His enhanced perception let him see not just the quantum readings, but the complex web of human relationships and decisions that had led to this moment. Then he spotted something. The lead researcher, he pointed to a woman in the display. "Dr. Sarah Chen. She's my ex-wife." Cathara's scales shifted to a pattern of surprise. "The quantum probability streams are more elegant than we realized. Your personal connection could be the key." "But I can't just walk in there," David protested. "I disappeared into space without a word to her. She probably hates me." "Perhaps," Nexus agreed. "But you don't need her to like you. You just need her to listen." Within hours, David found himself on a shuttle back to Earth. The Concordat had provided him with credentials identifying him as a quantum safety consultant. His enhanced mind could handle the technical aspects, but facing Sarah again, that would take a different kind of courage. The Nevada facility rose from the desert like a chrome mushroom, its quantum shielding visible to David's enhanced senses as a shimming dome of probability distortions. Security was tight, but his credentials got him through. Each step closer to the main lab made his heart beat faster. Then he saw her. Sarah looked exactly as he remembered, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, her lab coat pristine. She was explaining something to a group of technicians, her hands moving animatedly as they had when she used to tell him about her work. She stopped mid-sentence when she saw him. The color drained from her face. "Hello, Sarah," David said softly. "We need to talk about your quantum containment protocols." "David." She stared at him like he was a ghost. "What are you? How do you know anything about quantum containment? You're an accountant." "I was an accountant," he corrected. "Now I'm here to prevent a catastrophe. And I know you've already noticed something's wrong with the system. You've seen the anomalous readings, haven't you?" Sarah's eyes narrowed. "How could you possibly know about that? Those readings are classified." Because I can see it, David replied, letting his quantum awareness show in his eyes, a subtle glow that made Sarah step back. The same way you've known something was wrong, but couldn't quite put your finger on it. Trust your instincts, Sarah. You know the containment field isn't stable. For a long moment, she just stared at him. Then slowly she nodded. The harmonics have been off. Everyone else says the variations are within acceptable parameters, but your gut tells you otherwise, David finished. You always did have good intuition about these things. Let me help you find the problem, for old time's sake. Sarah hesitated, then gestured for him to follow her to her office. As they walked, David sensed Cathara and Nexus watching through his quantum awareness, ready to help if needed. But this part was up to him, one human trying to convince another to trust him one more time. The fate of reality itself might depend on how this conversation went. No pressure at all, the choice. Sarah's office was exactly what David expected, organized chaos, with holographic displays showing complex quantum equations and half-empty coffee cups scattered among stacks of data tablets. His enhanced mind automatically began decoding the equations floating in the air, seeing the fatal flaws that Sarah's conventional instruments couldn't detect. Start talking, Sarah demanded, closing the door, and make it good. You disappear for 8 months, no explanation, and suddenly show up as some kind of quantum physics expert. What happened to you up there, David? He considered telling her everything, about Cathara, the celestial tears, the quantum concordat. But he could see the probability streams branching out from that choice, most of them ending in disaster. The truth was too big, too fast. I found something in space that changed me, he said carefully, changed how I see things. And what I see right now is that your quantum computer design has a fundamental flaw in the probability matrix. Sarah's eyes narrowed. That's impossible. The matrix is triple redundant, with fail-safes that don't account for quantum entanglement at the macro level, David finished. He gestured at one of her holographic displays, his fingers trailing through the light as he highlighted specific equations. Look here and here. The containment field creates a resonance pattern that amplifies quantum fluctuations instead of dampening them. Sarah stood up, moving closer to examine the equations. David could see the moment understanding dawned in her eyes. She'd always been brilliant, she just needed someone to point out what she'd been subconsciously sensing all along. This can't be right, she muttered, fingers flying over her keyboard as she ran new simulations. If these calculations are correct, activating the computer could create a quantum cascade that would, she paled. That would tear apart the fabric of space-time itself. Starting here and spreading outward at the speed of light, David confirmed. Earth would be the epicenter of a disaster that could unravel the entire galaxy. Sarah slumped back in her chair, running her hands through her hair, a nervous gesture David remembered well from their marriage. How did I miss this? How did everyone miss this? Because you were all looking at it from a traditional physics perspective, David explained. But quantum mechanics doesn't play by those rules. Sometimes it takes an unconventional viewpoint to spot the patterns. Like the viewpoint of an accountant who mysteriously becomes a quantum physics expert. Sarah's voice held a mix of skepticism and wonder. David, what really happened to you out there? Before he could answer, his quantum awareness spiked. He sensed a sudden shift in the probability streams. Something was wrong, very wrong. The test, he said urgently. When is it scheduled? Tomorrow morning. Why? Because it's happening now. David's enhanced senses could feel the quantum energies building in the main lab. Someone moved up the timeline. Sarah grabbed her tablet, checking the system logs. That's impossible. Only the director has that authority. Oh no. Her face went pale. Director Phillips authorized an immediate test 5 minutes ago. He says the Chinese facility is about to activate their quantum computer. He wants us to be first. David was already moving. We have to stop it. How long until full power up? 3 minutes, Sarah called, running after him. But the system's locked down. Even with my credentials, I can't. Then we do it the hard way, David muttered. His quantum awareness reached out to Cathara and Nexus, sending a silent alarm. He felt their acknowledgement, but knew help wouldn't arrive in time. This was on him. They sprinted through the corridors, Sarah using her security clearance to get them through checkpoints. David could feel the quantum energies building with each passing second, reality itself starting to warp around the containment chamber. They burst into the main lab's observation room. Through the reinforced windows, David saw the quantum computer core, a crystalline structure surrounded by pulsing energy fields. Director Phillips stood at the main console, watching readouts with savage satisfaction. "Director, stop," Sarah shouted. "The containment field is flawed. If we activate now—" "We can't wait," Phillips snapped without turning around. "The Chinese team is minutes away from activation. America has to be first. The quantum computing race ends today." David's enhanced senses showed him the probability streams converging toward catastrophe. They had less than 30 seconds before the quantum cascade began. He could see only one way to stop it, but the price would be high. "Sarah," he said quietly, "do you trust me?" She looked at him, and for a moment he saw a flash of their old connection. "God help me, but yes." "Then get everyone out. Now." Sarah nodded, turning to the room's other technicians. "Emergency evacuation protocol. Everyone out." Her authority as lead researcher got them moving, even as Phillips tried to countermand her orders. David stepped forward, his quantum awareness expanding to its limits. He could see the flaw in the containment field clearly now, and he could see how to fix it. But the energy had to go somewhere. "Phillips," he called out. "Last chance to shut it down." "Security," Phillips shouted into his comm. "We have a saboteur." David didn't wait to hear the rest. Time seemed to slow as he reached out with his quantum-enhanced mind, doing what Cathara had taught him, not forcing reality to change, but gently nudging probability toward a safer outcome. The containment field wavered, its energy redirecting toward him instead of cascading outward. David became a human quantum sink, absorbing the power that would have torn reality apart. The pain was indescribable. Sarah screamed his name as reality itself began to bend around him. The last thing David saw before consciousness faded was her face, tears streaming down her cheeks as security personnel dragged her from the room. Then everything went quantum. Quantum resonance. David floated in a sea of infinite probability, his consciousness scattered across multiple realities. He saw every possible outcome of his choice, worlds where he failed, worlds where he succeeded, worlds where he never left Earth at all. The quantum energy he'd absorbed threatened to tear him apart at the subatomic level. "Focus." Cathara's voice reached him across quantum space. "Remember your training. Find your anchor point in reality." Through the chaos, David sensed Sarah kneeling beside his physical body in the lab, defying security's attempts to remove her. Her presence gave him something to hold onto, a fixed point in the probability storm. Slowly, painfully, he began pulling himself back together. The containment breach, he managed to think. Did it work? You prevented the cascade. Nexus's thoughts joined them. But at great cost. Your physical form is saturated with quantum energy. We're trying to stabilize you, but... David could feel it. He was no longer entirely solid, his body flickering between states of matter as quantum particles refused to settle into a single configuration. The room's sensors were going haywire, and he could hear Phillips shouting about contamination protocols. "David, please," Sarah's voice cut through the chaos. "Come back to me. Whatever's happening to you, fight it." He focused on her voice, using it as a guide through the quantum fog. His consciousness slowly reconnected with his body, though the process felt like trying to pour an ocean into a drinking glass. When he finally opened his eyes, he saw Sarah's face through a haze of quantum probability. "That's not possible," Phillips was saying, staring at his readings. "The energy levels, he should be dead. No human could absorb that much quantum discharge." He's not exactly human anymore, Clara said, stepping through a suddenly appearing portal in the lab's wall. Her true form was fully visible now, no longer hidden behind a shopkeeper disguise. Behind her, Nexus flowed into the room like living mercury. Security officers drew their weapons, but with a casual wave of Cathara's hand, probabilities shifted and the guns transformed into harmless flowers. Phillips backed away from the console, his face pale. What are you?" he stammered. "We are the Quantum Concordat," Nexus answered, its mercury form rippling. "And we are very disappointed in humanity's reckless experiments with forces you don't understand." David managed to stand, though his form still flickered occasionally between states. The Chinese facility, he remembered. "We have to stop their test too." "Already handled," Cathara assured him. "Our agents there have convinced them to delay. Your sacrifice bought us the time we needed." Sarah looked between David and the aliens, her scientist's mind visibly struggling to process what she was seeing. "All this time," she whispered, "this is what happened to you in space. You found them." "They found me," David corrected, reaching for her hand. She gasped as their skin made contact. Through the touch, she could feel echoes of his quantum awareness. "Everything I've done was to prevent catastrophe, to protect Earth." "And you succeeded," Nexus confirmed. "But your actions have forced our hand. Humanity wasn't supposed to learn about us for another decade, at least." "Then why reveal yourselves now?" Phillips demanded, finding his voice again. "Because of him," Cathara gestured at David. "His willingness to sacrifice himself to save others proved that at least some humans are ready for the truth. And now that he's been quantum-infused at this level, he'll need our help to stabilize. The question," Nexus added, "is whether humanity as a whole is ready to accept the reality of what exists beyond their current understanding. The existence of the Concordat, the true nature of quantum physics, the role your species could play in the greater galaxy." David looked at Sarah, seeing the wonder and fear warring in her eyes. "We're ready," he said firmly. "Humanity's greatest strength is our ability to adapt, to accept new paradigms when the evidence demands it. Yes, some will resist, but others will embrace the opportunity to learn, to grow, to become more than we are." Cathara's scales shifted in a pattern of approval. "Well spoken. Perhaps you understand your species better than we do, despite our millennia of observation." "So what happens now?" Sarah asked, still holding David's quantum-charged hand. "Now," Nexus answered, "we begin the real work. David's transformation will serve as a bridge between our peoples. Through him, we can start sharing knowledge safely, preparing humanity for its role in the quantum community." "And that role is?" Phillips asked suspiciously. David smiled, seeing the probability strings converging toward a brighter future. "To do what humans do best. Ask questions no one else thought to ask, find connections others missed, and imagine possibilities that even ancient races never considered. Together," Cathara added, "we will reshape the very fabric of reality itself." As if to emphasize her words, the quantum energy in David's body finally stabilized, settling into a new form that was neither fully human nor entirely energy. He had become living proof that humanity could transcend its limitations, adapt to the impossible, and emerge stronger. The adventure that had started with a simple quest for water had led to the dawn of a new era for human civilization. And somewhere in the quantum probability streams, David sensed that this was only the beginning. The real question was, what impossible thing would humanity achieve next? New horizons. 1 year after the quantum incident at the Nevada facility, Earth had changed in ways few could have imagined. The Quantum Concordat's revelation to humanity had initially caused chaos. Markets crashed, religions struggled, governments panicked. But true to David's prediction, humans proved remarkably adaptable. Standing on the observation deck of the newly constructed Quantum Integration Center in Geneva, David watched his students' progress with pride. Sarah, now his partner in both life and work, stood beside him, her own quantum awareness growing stronger each day. Remember, he instructed the diverse group before him, quantum manipulation isn't about force, it's about understanding probability and gently nudging it toward your desired outcome. 20 humans from various countries floated cross-legged in the air, their forms flickering slightly as they practiced basic quantum control. They were the first class of what the media had dubbed quantum initiates, humans selected for their potential to bridge the gap between conventional and quantum physics. "You're getting better at teaching," Sarah observed, squeezing his hand. The quantum energy they both now carried allowed them to share thoughts and emotions through touch. "Much more patient than when you first started." "I had good teachers," David replied, thinking of Cathara and Nexus. The two Concordat members had become Earth's primary liaisons with the greater quantum community, helping guide humanity's first steps into a larger universe. A slight disturbance in the quantum field alerted them moments before Cathara stepped through a probability portal, her scales dancing with excited patterns. "The council has reached a decision," she announced without preamble. David's students dropped gently to the floor, their attention captured by the aliens' arrival. Over the past year, they'd learned that when Cathara brought news, it was usually significant. "And?" David prompted, though his quantum senses already gave him a hint of what was coming. "Humanity has been approved for full membership in the Quantum Concordat." Cathara's announcement sent ripples of excitement through the room. "Your species' progress in adapting to quantum awareness has exceeded all projections. Even the most conservative council members were impressed." "What exactly does full membership mean?" one of the students asked. Nexus flowed into existence beside Cathara, its mercury form solidifying. "It means humanity will have a seat on the council, access to the full spectrum of quantum technology, the right to establish quantum gates throughout your solar system. But most importantly, it means you'll be able to help shape the future of galactic civilization." "There's more," Cathara added, her scales shifting to a pattern David had learned to recognize as amusement. The council was particularly interested in a uniquely human perspective on quantum mechanics, something your scientists proposed that we'd never considered. Sarah stepped forward, her eyes bright with understanding. "The quantum empathy theory. But that was just a hypothesis based on our observations of human quantum interaction patterns. A hypothesis that could revolutionize how we understand consciousness itself," Nexus confirmed. "Your suggestion that quantum awareness could be used to develop emotional intelligence rather than just technical manipulation, it's unprecedented." David felt a surge of pride. This was exactly what he'd told the Concordat about human potential, the ability to see connections others missed, to approach problems from unexpected angles. "Which brings us to the other reason for our visit," Cathara continued. "We've detected unusual quantum signatures in the Andromeda galaxy, patterns that don't match any known species. The Council believes a human perspective might be crucial in establishing first contact." "You want us to help make first contact with a completely unknown alien civilization?" Sarah asked, excitement evident in her voice. "Not just help," Nexus corrected. "Lead. You and David would head the expedition, with a team of your choosing from among the quantum initiates." David looked at his students, scientists, engineers, and dreamers who'd volunteered to push the boundaries of human potential. Each of them had shown remarkable progress in understanding quantum mechanics through the unique lens of human experience. "When do we leave?" he asked, already knowing Sarah's answer without needing to check. 1 month, Clara replied. "Time enough to complete this class's training and select your team. The quantum ship is already under construction." As the room erupted in excited discussion, David walked to the window, gazing out at the Geneva skyline. Quantum gates now floated above every major city, their crystalline structures a constant reminder of how far humanity had come in just 1 year. He remembered that moment in the convenience store on Nexus 7, when all he wanted was a bottle of water. How one simple choice had cascaded into changes that affected all of human civilization. The quantum probability streams had known, even then, what that moment would lead to. Sarah joined him at the window, her hand finding his. Through their quantum connection, he felt her mix of excitement and apprehension about the upcoming mission. But stronger than both was her sense of purpose, of rightness. This was what humanity was meant for, to explore, to question, to connect. Thinking about how it all started, she asked. David smiled, watching quantum energy dance between their intertwined fingers. Thinking about where it's going. We're about to make first contact with an unknown civilization, using abilities most humans didn't even know existed a year ago. And somehow that feels perfectly natural, Sarah finished. Because that's what humans do. We adapt, we grow, we reach for the impossible until it becomes possible. And it all started with a bottle of water, David mused. No, Cathara corrected, joining them at the window. It started with a human being willing to take a chance on something unknown. The water was just probability's way of getting you in the right place at the right time. As David looked out at the quantum-enhanced world humanity was building, he couldn't help but wonder what other chances waited out there among the stars. What other impossible things would humans make possible? The answer, he knew, was written in the quantum probability streams stretching out before them. All they had to do was be brave enough to follow where they led. The next adventure was just beginning.